I'm glad it's a small crowd here because normally I'm not a fan of speaking of big crowds here. How many of you guys are familiar with the CPSC or know who the Consumer Product Safety Commission is? They're kind of like they're like the FDA for consumer products. A lot of toys or your average like coffee maker or stroller, things like that. So I'm just gonna have this video up here. It'll like finish in 4 minutes. And I'll be talking in the meantime so you guys can kind of know what the product is. Oops, minus the music. So I sell high-powered magnet spheres, similar to those. And how many of you guys have your own business or participate in your own small business or are considering your own small business? Just so I have an idea. Cool, so, all right, so some background. 9 years ago, I started this business selling small rare earth magnet spheres, similar to what you see up in that video. It was all going pretty well. It was something that I started with my ex-girlfriend with $800 of seed money. And by 2012, we were maybe 5% of that market with about $600,000 in revenue. Around then is probably when the trouble started. Just to make a long story very short, what happened was Consumer Product Safety Commission tried to ban magnets. These magnets, because they are an ingestion hazard to children. Okay, here, I'll give you the CPSC's version of this argument to be as sympathetic as possible towards them, so you kind of have an idea as to the devil's advocate here. These magnets, they are small, they are easily ingested, they are much too small to have a warning. If you ingest them, they can pinch intestinally, they'll require surgery to remove. They, upon removal, they would say that it appears like the wound is like a bullet wound without an entry wound or an exit. People aren't aware of the hazard. People don't know that these can be dangerous if ingested, and that's one of the big parts of the problem. They would say that doctors also don't necessarily know how to diagnose the problems when children eat these magnets. And there are problems. Sometimes it seems like the symptoms are just like a fever or something initially. And there's really no reason to make our world more dangerous with these magnets, because these magnets have no utility, they're easily replaceable with anything else, and we need to just get rid of them, and there's no waiver, there's no sales restriction, there's no place to sell them, there's no age restriction that's appropriate to make these safe enough for any portion of the American population. They just need to be gone. So, unlike Susan, I have been in court multiple times for just nonstop, really. At one point, we were in 3 different court systems at once over these magnets against the CPSC and Department of Justice. When they did try to ban the magnets, pretty much everybody, all other players in the industry they laid down. They didn't really fight. They didn't do anything about it. They stopped selling, and we were the only ones to really fight not because I thought I'd win, but because I thought that if I didn't try to fight at least, then I think I would probably stay up many countless nights imagining or trying to imagine what would have happened if I did fight. But in the end, we've had more success fighting the CPSC than any company in decades. We were the first company to overturn a CPSC rule in 32 years. We're not totally out of the woods yet. We still have one more appeal, like a fourth level appeal, where the CPSC, where we're appealing the CPSC's decision to appeal an administrative law judge's decision to appeal the CPSC's original decision. So I don't know how that works exactly, where the CPSC gets to agree with themselves in the first place, and then we have to appeal that again. So now to kind of give the counter arguments to the CPSC's arguments. These magnets here. How about would you try to open this for me and just kind of magnets out so I can show people? These magnets, yeah, it's not too easy, is it? It's not, especially with all the warnings. So yeah, they're in there. You have to maybe show people that sticker. You have to pull out the entire sticker to even get in the box. No, I guarantee you, weed does not have that many warnings. Yeah. In the words of Denver's Westward, these magnets have more warnings than your average gasoline-powered chainsaw rental. They're covered with warnings. There's like 5 series of warnings. It says all over, there's no lifeguard on duty, intelligence required, do not ingest magnets. Yeah, multiple layers of warnings. And even though the magnets themselves are too small to have warnings, it's not the first product that's the case for. So like balloons, for example, it's too small to have a warning. Balloons are the number one suffocation hazard for children. And there's no warnings on those individually. Our firm sold them online primarily, where a credit card is required. It wasn't in toy stores. The other players in the industry, I think a lot of the problem was they did sell in toy stores, and a lot of children got a hold of them. But even including the entire industry, they were still safer than balloons, trampolines, skateboards, most products you would associate with like your Sports Authority or Home Depot. And actually, these magnets, it's a new ingestion, it's a new hazard pattern that people aren't aware of, but that's just solved by education. People don't know until they're taught. So that's the case with most hazards, really. If they don't know what the issue is, they just need to be taught what the issue is and what to avoid. If your mother never told you to look both ways when crossing the street, you might very well not be here. So, yeah, you mind if I grab this from you now? And just small here. Just gonna pass it down. So when Susan asked me here to come up with some ideas and share some ideas with about how small businesses might fight against regulators, especially large faceless regulators, that was a big struggle for me, largely because of survivorship bias. Do you guys know what survivorship bias is? Okay, here a good explanation for that is in World War II, warships that were coming back after battle, they would inspect the bullet hole patterns on them. And it seemed like largely they were on the tips of wings, on the inside of wings, and on parts of the fuselage. And it's easy to make the logical fallacy that because this is where the bullet holes are, this is where we need to add the armor. This is where we need to strengthen the plane. In reality, those were actually the parts of the plane that were stronger, because the planes that didn't make it back were the ones that were shot in the engine or in the cockpit. So my difficulty in coming up here is that I have survived, and the people that did not are not up here talking. It's difficult to kind of separate, the experiences, details, and strategies that have caused my success from the ones that were in spite of my success. So, like, for example, I sort of had, I've had I'm going to fight the government to my very last drop of cash-filled blood kind of attitude, and I was very upfront about that with the CPSC and every press release that I ever put out. Is that a good policy or strategy to have for your business? I have no idea, probably not. That's probably extremely risky. It's probably not something you should do. Other things like I would ask for forgiveness and not permission. Is that a good thing to do? I don't know exactly. Hard to say. Probably it's also more risk than you need to take. These were the sort of things that I had a lot of introspection about when trying to digest my experiences into tips that could be generally useful for businesses or ways to struggle against the government. I think actually Susan gave you better ones than the ones that I'm about to share. For example, recording the regulators, that's a great idea. The petitions, gathering your customers, that's also a good idea. I think, though, largely, most of my tips, let's see, the notes I've taken down, I mean, despite this being a libertarian conference and despite me wearing a Bitcoin and not bombs t-shirt, it's largely a how to avoid conflicts with the government type of list. It's kind of like a doctor prescribing exercise and healthy eating instead of how to deal with diabetes successfully. So, first of all, you have to be educated on the regulations. One thing you could do is contact your local small business administration office, arguably one of the more business-friendly agencies around. Their sole purpose is to make life easier for businesses. They can't hold your hand through every step of the compliance process, but they have expert consultants, and they can definitely help set your expectations for what lies ahead for your business. If you search SBA, they have a Denver office downtown. Search SBA Denver. They have workshops to provide insight into regulatory changes. It would also be wise to have someone specifically be the person responsible for your compliance, whether or not that's someone else or yourself. But it's something it's something worth dedicating resources to, so that you avoid running into a bigger issue. And also then it reduces kind of likelihood of oversights and blame shifting. I would seek out industry publications, other reliable sources for regulatory information. It depends on your industry, of course, but this, for example, is a pretty good resource. There's a lot of knowledgeable people here. There's plenty of newsletter and informational things to subscribe to. For Consumer Product Safety Commission related stuff specifically, there's just small newsletters that small, like almost safety industry people put out. For example, the product safety newsletter, they just collect all these things and republish it. So easier to be on your radar. And it's also good to have a lawyer. If you're starting out, you're probably not going to want a lawyer immediately, just they're expensive. But it is easier to sort of get to find an advising lawyer, or at least cheaper to find an advising lawyer than a courtroom lawyer who's going to actually go to court for you, because obviously court is long, expensive, and it's a lot to deal with. And they don't even have to necessarily have litigation experience, as long as they can kind of advise you through some regulatory roadblocks and through that maze a little bit. And last, something you could do is maybe automate the compliance process so it doesn't require so much hands-on attention on your part. For example, you might set your payroll software to alert you when your hourly workers hit 35 hours in a single week or something like that. Just giving you a heads up for the remainder of hours before they reach their 40-hour overtime threshold. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, there's plenty to worry about. You don't want to spend too much time thinking about regulatory burdens. But like death and taxes, it's not necessarily possible to avoid the regulatory state. So it would be, do yourself a favor, learn the lay of the land and in your locality before you end up in a crazy situation with the government that involves a lot of, court battle. Do we have any questions?
How did this affect when you started out selling in countries other than the United States?
Okay, so the CPSC, they're sort of the international leader on consumer product safety. So the second the CPSC does some changes, then other countries start following, like Health Canada, New Zealand, and Australia banned it shortly after the CPSC based on CPSC's data. Even though we showed that the CPSC cooked their data and they were completely intellectually dishonest about it, those regulatory changes kind of ripple outwards from America frequently. And so other countries like New Zealand and Canada, magnets are still banned right there, just like the ones they're holding. It's not like we're over in Canada fighting, and I don't know, they might not ever be unbanned. It's hard to say. Yeah.
How much did it cost you to add these 4 warnings and a child safety lock? Is the product expensive and no one wants it or something?
The warnings themselves are not that expensive. The magnets are expensive. Facing a potential shutdown is expensive. I mean, anytime the government tells you to shut down, even if for one day, it's not like you're just shut down for one day. You're shut down for, in my case, 4 months, because it's an entire supply chain. It all has to stop, and it all has momentum. And the second you have to put the brakes on everything, it's really hard to just get everything moving again. So the expense for the warnings, small. The expense for fighting, large. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts? Yes.
So do you think they're going to ban Tide Pods? I mean, it gets ridiculous.
I don't think they're going to ban Tide Pods.
I heard some stuff about it. It looks regular. It looks like a piece of candy.
Yeah.
There's no reason why it has to look like a piece of candy. I want it to be, it should be like solid white, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, they're not going to ban Tide Pods because Tide is a much bigger company, and they know they're not going to succeed with that. And the only reason they targeted magnets is largely because we were an easy target, because we were a small industry, and they did not expect anybody to actually fight them in the first place.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
They're all backed by the big guys.
Right. Right.
If the big guys push back,
Yeah, they're not gonna start a fight with Procter & Gamble. It's a small company, that has a product with a new hazard mechanism. That's That's really the key here. Yes.
Do you think it was one of your competitors that pushed on him to try to ship you out, or?
Oh, no. My competitors, I mean, at one point I had no competitors because they all shut down. My competitors, like, the largest one was Buckyballs. They fought for a long time, but ultimately they settled for like $300,000. Yeah, no, they don't.
What have your competitors said to you now that they see you're having some success?
Well, ironically, they pop right back up the second we open the gates. So, yeah.
They let you fight the battle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I understand the risk in children.
Uh-huh.
Has there been very many cases of adults ingesting these?
No, there haven't been. There haven't been many cases with adults, and even in children, as long as the product has the warnings, the record is very clear about them being safe.
People ingest coins all the time.
Yes.
And some people, perforate and have problems. I guess somebody ought to tell the mint about that.
Well, so that is one of the things, though. It's people aren't aware that these magnets are more dangerous than, say, coins or marbles, or even like tacks when ingested, because these magnets can pinch, and then they don't pass once they do pinch. Then it's surgery. But still, it's not like they're. Let's say that if you were an assassin, I would not recommend using these magnets to kill people. They kill over maybe like 1 month if you don't like get anything treated. It's painful. Maybe balloons would be a much more effective way to kill someone.
Yeah, I imagine if the doctors don't know what's wrong, they would take an X-ray.
Right, exactly, an X-ray, and now doctors actually do know. So initially the problem was they didn't, but by this point they generally all know.
Generally, when you got kids who've got a little toy, and then all of a sudden it's disappeared,
Yeah.
you kind of know where it's going. I mean, I remember as a kid, I swallowed marbles.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great.
Well,
And they didn't do anything about that. Too, the doctor.
I would recommend keeping these away from your young children. Generally, if they're like old enough to not swallow non-foods, then they're okay. Another issue was that a lot of teenagers were using them as like fake piercings, and then they would swallow them. Yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah, those
Right. Right.
the government tends to make a problem when there isn't one. And a lot of these regulations and stuff are unintended consequences.
These magnets, I feel like that. I don't feel like there should be completely zero regulation about them, because they are more dangerous than a lot of things. They shouldn't be sold to like babies, for example. But on the other hand, where's the middle ground? There has to be some middle ground, and that's what we were seeking the whole time. It was impossible to communicate with the CPSC. They would just brick wall us the whole time. They would never tell us whether or not a warning was acceptable. They would say no warning is acceptable. There was never some sort of middle ground about like waivers, about maybe like having them sign something. We tried to sell them in dispensaries for a long time, where you would have to have an ID to even get in the place, and they didn't even find that to be okay. So, yeah, I don't know.
What's CPSC?
Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Is that new?
No, they've been around for 30, 40 years. Yeah.
Where are you selling them now? Just online?
We're selling them online right now, zenmagnets.com and neoballs.com. We're trying to get into some like hobby stores and like science toy stores, kite stores with 14 up sections. But that's a whole other story. For now, zenmagnets.com is probably the best place to find them. That's where we've been selling them since 2009. And that's where it's been working out the best.
Couldn't make make them the size of golf balls, and then they couldn't go down.
Ironically, if they were the size of golf balls and they kept the same strength, they have to keep the same strength to weight ratio in order to do certain things. And if they were the size of golf balls, they would also be so powerful they would probably impale, or not impale, but like cut off your finger if they snap together from distances.
Are these neodymium?
They are neodymium, yes. Neodymium magnets.
I've seen them marble size.
Mm-hmm.
They're not completely round like these, but
Yeah.
those are pretty fun to play with too. In a rock store of all places.
A rock store, cool. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. They're kind of like dark colored.
Yep.
Yeah, so those are much weaker magnets.
Yeah.
Those are not high-powered rare earth magnets. Those are CPSC would consider those non-hazardous magnets. Those, if ingested, would probably pass. These are, because the material, it's a very high-powered material. If literally magnets made of this material in size of blocks, they frequently amputate limbs. So small ones like that, they're designed for the fingers, but
It's just if you swallow these, just don't have an MRI to find out what's.
yeah, or a smaller one, one, not two of them or something. Just kidding, don't do that.
Well, things if you swallow it too, it has to be in the right circumstances, because generally they stick together, so if you swallow them like that,
Yeah.
stay together, you'll probably be okay, but.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Actually, if you do eat magnets, it's not like that you're certainly going to have magnets stuck inside of you. It's still an uncommon case, but it's still risky enough that you should go to the doctor and have them x-ray you.
Wouldn't it be better to hash this out in court as negligence instead of a government agency dictating what you can do?
Sure, that sounds great. Where do I do that? Yeah.
I got in a little bit late to this.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, no, we've been in battle with the federal agencies for a long time, so there have been no personal injury cases against us. I think those lawyers know that there's plenty of warnings here, and it's inconsistent to try to blame the manufacturer here in this case. But there's also not that many cases. It's uncommon.
What do you call it where the government regulates one industry almost to the point where it's out of business, so a competitor can
Is there a name for that?
Regulatory capture.
regulatory capture?
Regulatory capture.
Yeah, they regulate things so that the small guy can get in.
Oh.
So the big guy can operate.
Huh.
And I'm really big on energy
Okay.
and nuclear power.
Okay.
And what is crushing the nuclear power industry in America, where it was invented, is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, because people got scared after 3 Mile Island. And now it's, along with people's irrational fear, and I think fossil fuel interests, it's now the most regulated industry in the country.
Wild.
And not only that, they're keeping our air dirty because of it. And it's, I don't know, sometimes I get angry at the government, and I understand it needs to be, like you say, reasonable.
Yeah, middle
checks.
ground. Mm-hmm.
But this one, I mean, it's so bad. The industry, if you want to test a new reactor design, you have to pay the NRC
Crazy.
to actually, comb through it.
Cool. Are we out of time here? I think we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, we are at 5:06.
Oh, shoot.
Okay. So yeah, Any last questions before I head off? Okay.
Thank
Cool.
you very much.
Thanks.